Welcome into the Elite Picks podcast, where we combine AI-powered player prop recommendations and our own insights to help you win big betting on the NFL. I'm Tyler here with John, and we've got a jam-packed show today. So let's dive right into our best bets for player props for the Sunday matchups. John, talk to me, man. After doing some research on the Elite Picks app, what is your best play for the Week 5 games?
So I did some digging for this one. I found a little bit of a gem. This bet is so good that FanDuel and DraftKings don't even have it listed. This is a BetMGM or Caesars line only. But I have Jacoby Brissett under 173.5 passing plus rushing yards. And I have an extra slide for you today. I have an extra slide. You want to see this? Ready? Hasn't cleared it this year, much less. I don't think he's cleared this line since he's been Indianapolis Colt. I think it's been that long. And I love the matchup. He's going against Miami here, which everyone knows you don't really need a lot of offense to beat Miami right now with Tua out. I mean, what was it last week? Will Levis and what's his name? Mason Rudolph combined for 100 yards passing and still put up 31 points, I think. So I expect the Patriots to approach this with their ground attack. I don't think that, as my friend from the podcast would call him, geriatric Jacoby is going to be contributing a lot in the passing game at this point. It's a 99.99 EP score. Those have been pretty dang good lately. So this is, I don't want to say lock. I don't usually say the word lock, but I really love this bet and immediately put down money on it as soon as I found it. So again, it's a BetMGM Caesars special. I couldn't find this line on FanDuel or DraftKings, and I kind of understand why. So, but yeah, that's my bet of the week.
Certainly a lot of red on that chart, as you can see. Red all over the place. So, and in terms of taking the under here, it's funny because I consider Jacoby Brissett probably the prototypical game manager. Like, if you want to build a game manager, this is the guy. And as you mentioned, even last week, Titans didn't do a great job passing against the Dolphins. Brissett really doesn't have many guys to throw to. I think maybe Douglas or even Hunter Henry may be his top target.
Yeah.
So under all of those circumstances and these trends, I just see this not being a great game at all, and maybe being even similar to that Dolphins Titans game that we saw from the week before. So don't think also Brissett's really much of a rusher, a guy that's going to use his legs to get that extra first down. So and you obviously mentioned it before, the 9999, the EP score, it's talking to us. So I absolutely love this play, and I'm probably going to tail you on it.
Nice. Well, that means I'm doomed. No, just kidding. Yeah, we got burned by some hooks last night, but the algorithm was right for sure on its thinking about it at least. So, but what you got cooked up this weekend? Anything good?
Yeah, so I wanted to go with the early Sunday game. For those of you who don't know, there is a game at 9:30, I believe, Eastern time in the morning on Sunday overseas. So I wanted to give us a little bit of action to start our Sunday morning. And I'm going to go with Allen Lazard over 33.5 receiving yards against the Minnesota Vikings. Lazard has surpassed this receiving yard prop in 3 of his last 4 games. When you look at the Vikings, they've obviously played very well this season and probably better than what most predicted. But they do rank last in receiving yards allowed per game. So this does set up very well for Lazard. Not to mention, it's very clear to me that Rodgers favors Lazard in this passing game as the second option behind Garrett Wilson. And hasn't been afraid to look his way to start this season. Lazard's averaging roughly 6 targets per game. So, and in terms of the EP score from the Elite Picks app, you're looking at about a 96 EP score, which is rather high for receiving yard props for Week 5. So the combination of it being an early game, knowing that Rodgers really likes Lazard and he's been able to pass this number, this player prop number over the first couple games to start the season. Give me Allen Lazard over 35.5 receiving yards.
I love it. That'll be fun waking up early on Sunday to watch a little bit of British football going on there. But you've been nailing these player props with the receivers over under in the 30s and not the wide receiver one. Like it's been in the pocket for sure. So 96, this was definitely one of the better picks on the app. I remember seeing this one as well. So I love it. I think it's a great pick. 6 targets per game, and the over-under is at 35.5. Like, I'm definitely tailing that one for sure.
Yeah, they've obviously done a good job. Defenses at shutting out Garrett Wilson, which I think has just opened up more opportunities for Lazard. And obviously, Rodgers wanted to bring him, over from when they were from their time in Green Bay. So Rodgers has not been afraid to let everybody know, who his favorite targets are, or who he trusts. And in this case, he trusts Allen Lazard. So let's hope we can cash this one and get our Sunday morning started off with some mimosas and some winning bets.
For sure.
All right, so we're gonna keep this moving, and we're gonna now look to cover our community picks for this week, which were all voted on by Elite Picks users in the app. So, John, is there any picks from our community on this list that stands out to you?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much because I might have a couple of these cooked up in the parlay, but Amari Cooper, we already talked about on last episode against the Washington secondary. Give me any wide receiver anywhere against the Washington secondary this year. There's been a lot of receivers that have ate against them. Malik Neighbors went over 100. Jamar Chase went over 100 pretty easily, so I'll definitely be looking at that matchup. I love Josh Jacobs in this as well. He might be part of my parlay. Wink, wink. But again, going against that LA Rams defense, that's a pretty good spot if you want to rush the football as of late. Tell me a little bit more about Matt Stafford up there, and I guess the Rams rushing defense against Josh Jacobs. Do you think that's a pretty good spot?
Yeah, definitely don't mind covering these two guys since obviously they're playing against each other. The Stafford completions is interesting. Obviously, there's been a bit of a musical chairs in terms of the wide receiving core with Stafford to start compared to when the season started and everybody was healthy. So I think now that he's starting to get settled in with some of these wide receivers like Tutu Atwell, as well as the tight end Colby Parkinson, as well as Whittingham, if I'm not mistaken, or Whittington, excuse me, who's a rookie this year. So this is a game script that's going to favor this bet because the Rams will most likely be down. I think it's a spread of, I think they're maybe getting 3 points. And although it is in LA, it's probably going to be 70-30 in terms of the Packers fans and the Rams fans that'll be in attendance. So I think they're going to be down, and Stafford's going to need to throw the ball if they want to keep up. And if I'm not mistaken, this is also an EP score that's really high. I mean, one of the highest of the entire slate. So yeah, I really do like this.
I pulled it up right now. It's a 99.99, and the line has moved up to 22.5. So if it's at 22.5 and that line and that EP score is still at 99.99, like there's some data signaling happening there for sure. Also, I'm scrolling down to look at the compare books feature, and it is available on FanDuel still for 21.5. So if you want the best odds on that, also Caesars has it as 21.5, but BetMGM has gone up to 22.5 for that line. So if you're looking for that, you can use that feature or just check out your book. But again, FanDuel over 21.5. That's pretty indicative right there. Even when the line moved, the EP score still stayed at the max value.
Definitely. And obviously looking at the other side of this game now, looking at Josh Jacobs over in rushing yards, over 65.5. To make this very clear and very simple, the Rams have allowed the most rushing yards in the league. You could pretty much drive a Mack truck through some of these holes that these running backs have been able to run through this season. And we've seen Jacobs rush for 80-plus yards in 2 games against other teams that also have terrible run defenses. The Eagles and the Colts. The Colts, I think he ran for well over 100 yards. So all of that, to me, makes this a nearly perfect formula for this rushing prop to cash. And as I mentioned, on Stafford's side, the game script should heavily favor running the ball and Jacobs cashing this prop because they should be ahead and should be able just to let Jacobs control the time of possession.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of controlling the time of possession, I think Baltimore is going to try to do that against Cincinnati with Derrick Henry down there over 18.5 rushing attempts. I like that bet as well. I think I already put down maybe a unit on that. So definitely look out for him in that matchup. They're going to, Cincinnati hasn't been world beaters this year on offense. So I think that Baltimore is going to try to go in there with the same exact game script that they did against Buffalo. So I think that's a good bet as well.
Yeah, Henry's obviously been looking like he's in his prime and has been hitting on all cylinders. So definitely love that. And I got to mention, I know we briefly discussed it before we started filming here, but Tyreek Hill, obviously, when he has a healthy Tua, we see that prop number like nearly
98.
double.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that we see it at 47.5, I know maybe last week some users were intrigued, with Snoop Huntley coming in at quarterback. And wasn't able to get over that. I think he maybe had no, but hey, if I knew he was playing that game, I might have capped that game differently in terms of picking sides. But New England is a stingy defense, but if Huntley has been able to get any sort of chemistry with Hill over the last,
week,
12 days, week of practices. Yeah. I mean, the great thing about Hill is one catch can really just, he could blow the top of a defense. So hopefully Huntley can feed Hill the ball here so we can get that over.
For sure.
All right. So we're going to keep this rolling. Now we're going to talk about some parlays that me and John have cooked up for week 5. John, I know you've been in the lab. I know this is one of your favorite segments of our show. What parlay do you have cooked up for us for this weekend?
Well, first of all, I just want to grope that I was one leg away last week from a 4-leg 1,000 plus 1,400 parlay or whatever it was. I ended up boosting it to one leg away. The plus money legs all hit, and it's it's always that minus 120 leg that you're like, oh, this is the easiest leg of it. That's the one that doesn't hit. So we reduced it down to 3 this week. We want to start off with a hit here. So the odds aren't as crazy. Plus 508 is still a pretty good return here. I would say, I'm biased here, obviously, but I'm going to say that this parlay is so good that if Calvin Ridley sees it, he's going to get suspended again. So with that being said, we're going to start off with Amari Cooper over 49.5 receiving yards against that pitiful Commanders defense, 28th in passing yards per attempt allowed. They like to get into shootouts because their offense is so high-powered, which actually kind of hurts their defense a little bit because teams have to throw against them and end up throwing for tons of yards. Wide receiver ones have 8 against them. Amari Cooper is obviously splitting some targets with Jerry Jeudy, but he is the number 1 targeted receiver on that team so far by a small margin. So I like him over 49.5 receiving yards there. Again, had an 80-yard touchdown called back last week because of a holding penalty. So Browns offensive line, for my sanity, don't do that this week. Next one, we already talked about Jacoby Brissett, geriatric Jacoby, under 173.5 passing yards plus rushing yards. Obviously 0 for his last 6, 99.99 EP score. And then finally we have Josh Jacobs over 62.5 rushing yards. We just talked about that in the community pick segment. Great matchup. The Rams are 28th in rush yards per attempt and have allowed the most rush yards in the NFL so far this season. Obviously a huge gap left where Aaron Donald used to be. So that's my bet of the week. I already put a bonus bet down on it. Again, I mentioned that the second prop on here, the Jacoby Brissett prop, is not yet available on DraftKings or FanDuel. So maybe if you're, during the weekend, that might pop up. But as of now, I have this parlay on BetMGM because that's where all 3 of these props are available. So Tyler, what do you think? What's going to go wrong with this one?
No, I actually like it a lot. I'm also curious, and you might not be able to answer this, but what maybe the under of just his passing yards Brissett is if maybe folks don't have the opportunity on some of those other books.
I was looking. That. The EP score was actually a lot lower on that.
Okay, so the number obviously isn't much closer.
Yeah, his passing yards was much more, I don't want to say accurately, but fairly judged, if that makes sense, as far as the book's lines. So I'll pull it up here on my phone real quick.
It definitely didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
no, you're good. I have the app right here. So he has only cleared his passing yards line once this year, and that was last game. With an EP score of 91.39, but obviously not the 99.99 of his passing yards plus rushing. So his line is at 164.5, and I want to see his rushing yards if I can find it by game.
But and I've already taken the Amari Cooper receiving yards bet. That was an easy one to pick out on the app, and same with Josh Jacobs. So. I don't see any reason why this can't hit under the circumstances and under the supporting facts that we've been able to provide for the lovely ladies and gentlemen here as to why this should hit. And obviously, I think last week you maybe did a 5 or 6 leg or so, and knowing that you missed just that one, last week,
So we're taking that leg off. We're taking the losing leg off. That's the logic for sure. His rushing totals, he hasn't cleared his current rushing prop of 9.5 yards in the last 3. So he has 6 rushing yards, 0 and 3 in his last 3. So I'm pretty confident taking that extra free 10 yards for his combined passing and rushing yards there, because that gives me a little bit more buffer on his passing yards. Like that, I think that's how that's going to play out. So, but yeah, what you bring out of the lab this week for your parlay?
Yeah. So I wanted to stick with majority of wide receivers, since that's kind of been my shtick this year on our Elite Picks podcast. But a little bit of mix of some receiver props as well as a quarterback prop. But obviously, I wanted to stick with the Allen Lazard trend per se, and I wanted to go with his over 2.5 receptions at -165. I definitely don't expect it to stay there as we get into Sunday morning. I'm guessing it might get to 3 or even 4, because I know he's gotten well over that in the last few games. So definitely give me Allen Lazard over 2.5 receptions. I also went with Christian Kirk's over 54.5 yards. The first 2 games, he was a bit quiet, but over the last 2 weeks, as the Jaguars have really tried to figure out their identity, they've been peppering him with targets. He had over 20 targets in the last 2 games. So I expect this to be a shootout against the Colts. And I think that Kirk's going to get more than enough opportunities, similar to what we saw the last 2 weeks. 54.5 yards isn't really all of that much when you're getting that amount of targets. So I think that this is a great one for Sunday. After that, I decided to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. over 56.5 receiving yards against the Niners. Niners have been middle of the road per se, and in terms of their pass defense. Marvin Harrison Jr. last week kind of had his first down week, I would say, had right around or under 40 yards. So definitely expect a bounce back week in a game where they're probably going to have to play from behind, or at least it's going to be competitive. And they're going to need to feed Marvin Harrison Jr. if they're going to want to keep up. So definitely give Marvin Harrison Jr. Over 56.5 receiving yards at -120. And I got Jordan Love over 1.5 touchdowns, passing touchdowns against the Rams for many of the reasons that we've talked about. The secondary has just been absolutely Swiss cheese in terms of all the holes in that secondary and the amount of work these receivers have been able to put in against the Rams. So I think Love, who also is outside of, I think, the games he's been injured, has hit 2 touchdown passes just about each of those games. So, and the last one, but certainly not least, is a little bit more of a deep cut here. Jordan Whittington over 47.5 receiving yards against the Packers at -115. So as I said, the Rams have been playing musical chairs a bit with the wide receiving group, as you've seen Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua hurt. Last week, Whittingham got a lot of targets, and I believe he had over 60 yards receiving. So this is a guy that looks like he's going to play that Puka Nacua sort of role while those 2 guys are hurt. So I expect him to get a lot of targets in a game where the Rams will be playing behind. And I think that this is a bet that also coincides with that Matthew Stafford completions over. So maybe if you're feeling lucky in a same game parlay, you can get some of those plays together for this. But as I digress and wrap up this parlay, if you put this together and you bet 10, you're going to win nearly $190 because of that 25% profit boost that you get on DraftKings. So last week I went with the touchdown parlay. Did not go well at all. I believe one of the 6 guys I had was able to get in. So I decided to go back to what I know best in the Elite Picks app and go after some guys that had some relatively high EP scores.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great bet. Even without the boost, you're looking at, plus 1,400, it looks like. Bet 10, win 140. So I love it. That's all a great spot. And your intel on the Rams is certainly valuable there in that leg of the game. But yeah, as far as who ruins this parlay, I don't have a good answer for you. I mean, Christian Kirk definitely seems like a guy who could let you down at any given week, but he has been playing super well. I think you said that Gabe Davis is going to play this week, but Gabe Davis could put up zeros on the board any given week, just like his jersey number, as we experienced in Buffalo. So I like it. I really, really like it, especially Alan Lazard over on his receptions. That line's going to go up, even if it's plus money for over 3.5. I really like that line. I might go get in on that even at, as a single at minus 165, because he has been Rodgers, kind of dependable target. And much to the dismay of my fantasy team, Garrett Wilson has not been getting the work he deserves. So I don't know what's going on there, but I might need to find a trade partner pretty soon for that. So we'll see how that goes.
Totally understand. Like I said, they've done a great job, defenses, at making sure that Rodgers is not giving the ball to Wilson, at a high volume, at least this year. But yeah, and as John mentioned, definitely check, our comparison section for the other sports books, because some of these numbers are either a little bit higher or a little bit lower, depending on what sports book you may be on. I know I'm on about 2 or 3. I try to get, as much action as I can in terms of, available lines, but definitely take advantage of that in the app, as John mentioned.
For sure.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to move on to the Monday Night Football game. I know we had a couple weeks where we had double headers, but now we're going back to that single game slate for the Monday night matchups. But before we talk about the game picks, I do want to get into our best player prop bet for this matchup between the Saints and the Chiefs. So, John, talk to me. Who do you like for this matchup?
Well, I don't want to go out on a limb here, but this could be the easiest first half cash that you have on Monday Night Football. Xavier Worthy, over 1.5 rushing yards. He's cleared this 3 out of 4 this year, and he didn't have any rushes last game. So that means, he's due. He's getting 3 out of 4, and he just missed 1. That's a good spot. Obviously, the Chiefs didn't need to be very creative to beat the Chargers because, it's the Chargers for them. It's a common game that they like to win. But against New Orleans, high-powered offense, they're going to be pulling out their bag of tricks. Andy Reid, he just loves running that jet sweep. So, again, this line is actually not available on FanDuel, but it is on DraftKings and all the other major books from what I can tell. And also some other fun facts. Saints are 26th in rush yards per attempt, and Xavier Worthy is averaging over 1 attempt per game so far. He's had 2 in 1 and then 1 carry in each of the other ones. So I love it. If he touches the ball, he's getting at least 3 yards. He's had 1 game where he went over 20. So this is another play where it's fun to get some alt lines if you can too. If you get that 25 plus alt line somewhere, it'll be like plus 900, plus 1,000. You can put a little, $1 or 2 on that. That's a fun play as well. But I love this. I think they're going to try to get him involved. And one of the best ways to get a guy like this involved is that jet sweep motion, which counts as a rush. So give me Xavier Worthy over 1.5 rushing yards. I think it's a great pick. What do you think?
These are some of my favorite plays, just because of the amount or the lack of yardage that you need. One play, as you said.
Yep.
This could be over within the first quarter, the first drive, or maybe the first half. So
could be the first play.
I'm definitely, yeah. And as somebody who is on the East Coast and constantly catches himself falling asleep in the third or fourth quarter because it just gets a little bit too late, it'd be nice to have a play like this where we can cash it real early and go to bed knowing, we won't have to sweat anything out in the morning to see how it played out. But in seriousness, obviously the Chiefs are decimated on the offensive side of the ball with injuries, whether it be running back or wide receivers. So if they're going to want to score points, Patrick Mahomes has to give the ball to somebody, whether he's throwing it to them or handing it off. I know in the running game, Kareem Hunt has been getting a lot of the work since last week, but he is questionable for this game. So I can imagine that they don't want to necessarily run him into the ground right away after 1 week. So this should be a great opportunity for Worthy, who, if not mistaken, in that opener to start the season, had a nice long run for a touchdown on one of those jet sweep plays. So obviously not looking for a touchdown here, but just something along the lines of that is all we're looking for here for a quick cash. So under the circumstances, I love the bet, especially with the 90 EP score for just one game. Relatively hard to find certain EP scores where you're going to be finding those 99s or those 95s, those 97s when, we're picking from a very small, group of players. So absolutely love this, man.
Yeah, for sure. What did you pick out of that small bag of gems for this Monday night matchup?
So I decided to stick with the receivers. I know our users are probably like, "My guy, you got to switch it up for us here." But I go with what I know and what seems to do well for me. So I'm going to go with Chris Olave over 58.5 receiving yards. He surpassed 80 yards receiving in his last 3 games. He's without a doubt Carr's number one target and number one wide receiver for the Saints. Shaheed is more of that, I would say, high ceiling guy who sort of stretches the field compared to Olave, who's a bit more consistent in terms of yardage and receptions. So this is going to be a game that I think is going to be close and that may potentially have a lot of points. So I think this is just going to give Olave multiple opportunities to get over this line, which, to be honest with you, isn't very much for the amount of volume or for the amount of yardage he gets per catch. So nothing crazy, just going to make it simple. Let's go Chris Olave over 58.5 receiving yards.
I love it. They're definitely going to need to throw the ball in order to win in Kansas City, I think. So they're not going to do it, just trying to get, Alvin Kamara going on the ground. That Chiefs defense is too good. So I love it. This line is favorable. It's not up in the 70s or 80s. So I really like this for, a star number one wide receiver. So I love it. I'm definitely going to tell you on that one.
Awesome. Well, let's definitely make some money on Monday night with these 2 player props. I know, as I said, I was going to tail you on your best bet earlier in the episode, but definitely going to tail this one too. We win together, we lose together, but at the end of the day, we do it together, and that's what matters
true.
Most. All right, so now
we don't have B-Dot here to spoil our game picks, so let's see what we can cook up.
Yeah. So obviously we got the Saints at the Chiefs here. Looking at the actual game sides for this matchup, the line is 5.5. John, tell me, who do you like?
Well, I feel like I'm going to regret this because whenever you bet against the Chiefs, it usually comes back to bite you. But I'm going to take the Saints in the points here. The Chiefs haven't blown anyone out this year, really, and they like to play these one-possession games where it comes down to the wire, and then frustratingly, as a Bills fan, they just figure out a way to win. So they might win this game, but 5.5 points, I'll take it. So I'm going to take the points in this one, and that's my pick. What are you going with?
So I got to go against you on this one. As you stated, it's hard for me to go against the defending champs at home in primetime football. So definitely give me the Chiefs minus 5.5. Obviously, we talked about some of the injury issues with this team, but guess what, ladies and gentlemen? When you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, who is the baddest man on the planet, anything can happen. So I think he's going to be able to really will this team to a victory on Monday night against the Saints. But also, I think this is going to be an opportunity for Andy Reid, and I think you slightly mentioned this, John, that he's going to really go deep into that playbook to pull out some good plays that are going to help get some points on the board or get this offense over the hump a little bit. So a combination of all those reasons, plus the fact that Travis Kelce really hasn't gotten going yet. And he finally got, I think, over 60 yards this last week. So I expect him to be a big vocal point in this passing offense, as well as obviously Xavier Worthy. So, give me the defending champs at home, baby. Minus 5.5. As Travis Kelce says, you got to fight for your right to party. So we're going to party with the Chiefs minus 5.5 for the Monday night matchup.
I like it. Well, we're picking differently. And B-Dot's not picking opposite of us, so we might be okay. One of us has to be right here, right? We're not going to have. I feel like B-Dot he can just dance on us all day because he's beat us with his game picks recently. Whether it was the Falcons last night, he won. He's doing the Dirty Bird dance or his JETS Jets chant. So, but we'll have to get his game pick in the group message for this one.
Definitely, and he. As you mentioned for the Thursday night game, he cleaned up out of the 3 of us. He took it on home. So got to give props to B-Dot on those picks for sure.
I was gonna say he can take his victory lap next Wednesday when we do the show for sure.
Exactly. Awesome. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. I want to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps the page out a lot as we try to continue to grow this community and this channel. Also, leave a comment and let us know what you'd like to see more of, what bets you may be playing, or some of your favorite players, whether it be for DFS or fantasy football. And please be sure to take advantage of our free trial for the Elite Picks app. The link is in the description below. Good luck, everybody, for these Sunday and Monday games for Week 5. We will see you guys next time.